We all hit these moments in our lives. Kurt, you've been alive long enough. You've hit some of them and gone like, I don't know what to do next. And just how God can, if you're willing, how God can use those moments to move you forward. People, I guess, think about that in terms of initially coming to Christ of like, I'm broken. I don't know what to do. So, Jesus saved me. And then this sort of expectation that it's going to be a storybook after that. But every time you hit one of those moments where you're just, I'm powerless to do anything about this. And if you're willing to let God drive, he's always going to take you to a new level. And so
hello, Liberty Spenders. Today, we are excited to have Matt Fagioli on the show. He's a serial entrepreneur, best-selling author, and the founder of the consulting firm Certain Success. Matt spent decades helping purpose-driven leaders turn their calling into real impact, believing that faith, humanity, and mission are the only strategies that will never fail. He's passionate about amplifying powerful messages to reach millions through world-class virtual events. He's also here to share how you can take your mission to the next level. And we're going to talk about Matt's new book from December, The Dirty Disciple. Welcome, Matt.
Hey, Kurt, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm pumped about it as well. And I am actually really excited to start with a very big transformational moment you had when you were visiting Rome in 2022. So let's share that story with our audience and how it led to where you are today.
Sure. Well, you're alluding to the kind of the opening story and through line story of my book, where I had a Jesus encounter, as I described it, in that hotel room, and I've had a couple of those sort of burning bush moments in my life, but that was the big one, which led to the book and all of that. But God sort of interrupted my life again in that moment. And it's interesting to talk about with people because I think a lot of people have not had that experience. Others have had it and maybe discounted what it was. But to me, it was completely undeniable that was God and that he was trying very hard to get my attention that day.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about it. What led to it? Why were you in Rome? And how did that lead to Dirty Disciple?
Yeah, thanks. Well, the premise of the book is that God uses all of the big challenging moments of our life to reach us, connect with us, and move us from wherever we are in our faith currently to a new place of understanding and relationship if we're willing to go. Like that's the whole concept of free will is we get to choose if we go on the ride. I was in a really difficult moment of my life, had a business failure, which I've had many, being a serial entrepreneur, I've had many, many great successes and many failures. So it wasn't so much the business failure, but there were some deep like relationship failures that happened through that. And so I was just a really tough time, but I went seeking God in those moments and man, he showed up.
Yeah. Well, it's like you said, some people might say, well, I've never really had a moment like that, or maybe they discounted it. And I think that's an interesting thing to get into a little bit because, even people who have grown up in church and are practicing Christians sometimes say they don't feel close to God. What made that experience different? What made it not just maybe a time of emotion, but hey, this is a time when God came and sat next to me and spoke to me?
Yeah, thanks for asking that, Kurt. And I would have put myself in that category. I was a Christian for decades, came to, what I consider to be my real faith moment in my early 30s in an evangelical setting here in the South. I live in Atlanta and had a pretty radical experience of Christ then. But then I sort of faded backwards into what I sort of call American Christianity, which is, yes, I believe in Jesus. I think I get to go to heaven when I die and yada, yada. But I'm mostly left to my own devices here. I think what I just described describes, a very wide swath of Christianity in the U.S. And so I would have put myself in that category until Rome in
Mm-hmm.
22. And I feel like God was saying to me, look, okay, we're going to go to a much deeper level together of understanding and of you hearing my voice, and even stepping into a role of evangelism, which at the time I would have said was nowhere near my gear. And I think speaks to the book title, Dirty Disciple,
Right.
of like I'm not worthy. But when you look at scripture, everyone that God calls is like, oh, you must be kidding, God. Like you're
Right.
talking to the wrong dude. And I would have said that about myself for sure.
Yeah, you're right. There's so many examples of that, whether it's Gideon or Moses, of people who say, what do I tell them? I don't speak very well. Or in Gideon's case, I'm the lowest of the low, right?
Yeah.
And so God sees something that we don't see. And I think part of that transition for you was transitioning away from feeling stuck chasing financial freedom, but being more mission focused in your business. So how would you distinguish that?
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons why I was telling God that he must be wrong to call me to anything that sounded like evangelism, because I'm a business guy, always chasing a buck, and career salesman and all that stuff. And I feel like now, in retrospect, I can say that God was like, yeah, I know. I need you to go and talk to all the business people about me and about the way we're handling things and the way we think about things, and even fundamentally, like what is a relationship with God supposed to even look like, and especially in a business context. And so I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, but it was really clear that what happened in that hotel room was about angels. I heard angels in like symphonic,
Mm-hmm.
levels of unmistakable something, and again,
Mm-hmm.
I think you discounted that in a lot of way. A lot of people could have been like, like that must have been the drugs or something. And I'm kidding about that. Although I had a bunch of wine the night before, and so, but God was like clearly saying, like, I'm here, I'm real. I want to call you to this next level if you're willing to go. And I'm going. I'm willing to go, and I'm going to the best of my ability. One of my favorite lines in scripture says, Lord, help me in my unbelief. And I pray that a lot.
Yeah. Well, and I know a lot of entrepreneurs and business people feel, you set some dreams. You say, I want to make $1 million, or I want my business to have this many employees, whatever that dream is. And then you get there and you feel like, well, this isn't as cool as I thought it was going to be. Right. But you talk about not just chasing financial freedom, but being free in the deepest sense. And so what do you think that looks like? Freedom beyond financial freedom, but free in our faith. How would you answer that?
Yeah, well, I think that for me personally, the depth of that is about reaching a place of surrender where you're really able to say, your will be done, Lord. Like I don't care. I said it this very morning. Like I don't
Uh-huh.
care where we're going, as long as you're with me, I don't care. And I could never have said that a few years ago. And when people would talk over my whole life about dying to yourself and things like that, I'd go like, I don't know if I can do that. And what I know now is that the mechanism of that is building a depth of relationship with God and hearing God's voice, which is it's a muscle you can build to come to a place of confidence where you can go like, there's no doubt in my mind that you're there and I trust you. And so I don't care what cliff you want to jump off of. Like I'm in.
Yeah. I know that experience has led to the Dirty Disciple. So why'd you write the book? What are you hoping to accomplish with it?
Man, the book has just been unbelievable. And, I explain in the book that I tried and failed to write the book. And then there was a big gap of me not sure what to do. And then God just sort of gave me this download of here's the rest of that book. And it's time now for that to come out. And then it happened really instantly. So I always kind of preface this deeper part of the conversation when somebody says like, why did you write it? I'm like, I didn't write it. Like God did that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just absolutely no confusion about that with me. But since that book has come out in just a few months, I feel like I've lived a decade in the last 3 months of talking to people about the book, talking to people about Jesus, talking to people about the walls that we hit in our lives, which, is a big theme I'm talking about in the book. Like we all hit these moments in our lives. Kurt, you've been alive long enough. You've hit some of them and gone like, I don't know what to do next. And just how God can, if you're willing, how God can use those moments to move you forward. And it's not always people, I guess, think about that in terms of initially coming to Christ of like, I'm broken, I don't know what to do. So, Jesus saved me. And then this sort of expectation that it's going to be a storybook after that. And, people who have walked in their Christian faith for a while know that that's not the case. But every time you hit one of those moments where you're just, I'm powerless to do anything about this. And, if you're willing to let God drive, he's always going to take you to a new level. And so the book is framed around the idea that we all hit those walls and that there's a mechanism to recognize and then be intentional about going to a new place within your faith with God. And it's just been remarkable to talk to people as they read it. And just last night I spoke to someone about that, and they said, I just saw myself in every one of those struggles, right? We all have them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you. We've been there. I wanted to get a little bit into, because I think it's really fascinating, what you do at Certain Success. You've just given me the broad brushstrokes of what you do there. So tell us a little bit about, for the uninitiated, you consult there. Who do you consult with? How do you help people? Talk a little bit about that.
Cool. Yeah. Well, the name, the Certain Success name, begs the question, like, how can we have certain success? And, it's tied to faith, right? I'm making a play on words there a bit to go like, there's no certainty in this world. The only thing you can be certain of is, who you are in Christ, and, what you've left behind when you go, and the impact that you have in the world. And so, it's this idea that we in business can be on mission, on the calling that God's given us, and, just delivering the most value into the world that we possibly can. And so I particularly love to work with people who have that kind of burning passion about the thing that they're doing, and then helping them amplify that.
Yeah. You call them persons of impact, right? Is that how you reference your clients, or people they're trying to impact? How does that work?
Yeah. Clients, to me, a person of impact has a clear faith, has a clear mission. And you recognize it right away when you meet someone who has, written books or built events or built a business of any kind around the thing that they're incredibly both knowledgeable and passionate about. And they want to change the world. They want to change as many people's lives around that thing, I meet people all the time. I have, authors who have written about a subject that is, and my book is an example actually, but one example, my friend Pam has written many, many books on the subject of grief. She has some deep moments of grief in her life, and she's built her whole entire business around helping people through that kind of season. And so she's a person of impact, and, there's just a million examples of that, but it's really clear when you meet somebody that's like that, that's on their mission.
Yeah. And so these persons of impact, you work with them. Part of what you do is you run a studio, right? So explain how that works together with Certain Success and the studio.
Yeah, well, you're right. Thanks. We built a studio in Atlanta called Avasano, and have partner studios all over the U.S. But I built hundreds and hundreds of live events in my life before becoming fully addicted to the virtual event model. the thing that people don't understand is just that virtual event is the most powerful way to reach your exact target audience at the highest possible scale, with the most possible leverage, right? And you see examples all the time of Tony Robbins is the one that most people immediately recognize his name. Will talk to literally millions of people at the same time, and also convert sales at a unbelievable rate by reaching exactly, let's say it's 250,000 people on a given day.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the exact 250,000 people across the globe of approaching 9 billion people who are specifically wanting to hear his message at that time. And it doesn't have to be 250,000 people. One of the things that I've come to understand is that, we could be talking about, Oriental basket weaving. And if there's 100 people on that meeting that are really passionate about that thing, that is the highest leverage way for that person to impact their audience.
Yeah. So I'd love to dig into virtual events. I've attended virtual events. I remember when when COVID hit and Tony switched to virtual events. So I was on one of the first that he had. My expectation was this is gonna, even Tony talks about it. He said, webinar, right? Like, this is going to be one of those things. But he really put together something fantastic, as is his way, right? And of course, he's a big name. But if I were a coach or consultant, maybe I've got some kind of audience, but I'm not a big deal. How would I think about virtual events? Do I kind of put it in the webinar category? Do I put it in the conference? Like I'm going to have a 2-day virtual event. How do I think about this? And then maybe as a follow-on, who should be thinking about this? Who should be doing a virtual event like what you're describing?
Yeah. Well, like everything, it depends how much effort and energy and production value you put into something, whether it's going to come off as, sort of garage band and
Mm-hmm.
not highly produced, or if it's going to come off and look like a Tony Robbins event. And so there are all different kinds of, levels of that, right? Tony's event can cost $500,000 to execute virtually. And you can also execute a virtual event that costs, very, very little. And so everything in between. But I think the thing that gets lost on people, because you're able to sit at your house and turn on Zoom, people think, oh, this is all this is. A
Mm-hmm.
highly produced event that's going to convert 7 figures has a lot of recipe to it that people don't understand. And so it can be any audience of any size. And you asked the question, like, who should be thinking about this? I'm starting to think that I can apply the virtual event model at great effect to almost anything. And I'll give you an example or two. One example that I'm playing with is selling expensive home saunas, which cost, $7,000, $10,000, $15,000. If we build a virtual event for saunas, which to my knowledge doesn't exist, and this is just a hypothetical example. But the point is that you have to spend the amount of time that it takes to build credibility with the audience about you and your product or service to the point where they would feel comfortable making a $10,000 decision.
Mm-hmm.
And that's nearly impossible to do in a webinar. There just isn't enough time to build that
Mm-hmm.
kind of credibility. And so it's often a multi-day, certainly multi-hour, if not multi-day experience. But if you do that well, and you do that, first you have to have authority in your space. So when we talk about person of impact, right, we're
Mm-hmm.
saying, hey, we're putting someone in front of the camera who is highly credible and passionate about their thing. So that has to be there. And then you have to spend enough time building credibility in order for that to convert.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this show, it's probably because you understand something most people don't. Marketing to Liberty spenders isn't just about ads or tactics, it's about trust. And in the real world, trust moves through relationships. And that's why private introductions and deal flow are such a core part of what we do.
So FastPass is a private introduction and deal flow network for Christian and conservative leaders who already have influence and want to scale fast. It's not open networking, it's intentional introductions between people who already share alignment. We've seen one client land a $25,000 opportunity from a single introduction. Another told us that FastPass has become his largest source of referrals, not because of volume, but because of fit. And yet another closed her equity round at a key moment just due to the right introduction.
When you book a one-to-one consult with us, we're not handing you a list or making big promises. Instead, we're having a real conversation about what you're building, who you want to meet, and whether FastPass makes sense for this season for you. So no pressure, no hustle, and no awkward pitch from us.
Yeah. If you're ready to grow through relationships instead of forcing everything on your own, head to libertyspenders.com/FastPass and book a one-to-one consult with us.
In worst case, you leave with clarity. Best case, the right introductions change the trajectory of what you're building.
Okay, back to the episode.
Well, when I think of like a Tony Robbins event, like I've been to his business mastery thing, both virtually and in person. And so now Tony's a big name. People would come to a Tony Robbins event just to hear Tony, but then he'll also have other speakers. He has Todd Hartley there, David Meerman Scott, Keith Cunningham, who are all excellent, by the way, and others I'm not thinking of. And then I see some of these other virtual events. So maybe it's an event for a particular group or organization, but they'll have a headliner or two, so it's an event for Kurt Luidhardt, but Tim Tebow's speaking, or, Ed Milet or something that people have. So when I picture what you're talking about, I picture, okay, we're going to have an event for, Kurt's Liberty Spenders, but in order to get people there, we need, Tim Tebow, or we need some big name to really entice folks. Is that how you drive people to it? Or is it just on the authority of the person holding it? How do you fill a room, I guess?
Yeah, that's a really great question and important to talk about. I would say that mostly you should not do it the old way. The old way was to use the headliners. And that still can be effective, but it's not necessary. And you see people doing it, you still see people doing it, but the people that really know what they're doing, like we'll use Tony as the example, you'll see him using fewer and fewer guests because you don't need them. And I guess to use you as a specific example, like if we were building a Liberty Spenders event, we would not necessarily need, John Maxwell or anybody else to draw the audience that we want to draw. There may be a happy medium there, but that is kind of the old way. And I mentioned, I'd built for 10 years, I ran live events in ballrooms and we operated that way. And it was more necessary when you're trying to fill a physical ballroom.
Yeah. Well, I've seen a lot of people move out of the big events. I think both Russell Brunson and Grant Cardone announced recently they weren't going to hold the big in-person conferences. So are we seeing a trend to move for folks moving entirely virtual? Is that what you're thinking is the future?
100%, or let's say 90%. And here's, this is a good example. So, and I didn't really talk about Russell Brunson, even though I recently joined his Inner Circle Mastermind because I think he's just the most dynamic marketer on the planet. I didn't mention him because not everybody knows who he is, but he's the founder of ClickFunnels. They built, in my opinion, the greatest marketing event in the world called Funnel Hacking Live, and then made the decision to shut it down. And they made that decision for a couple of reasons, but among those reasons was it was a $5 to $10 million event and an incredibly heavy lift. And Russell came to understand that he could convert at a high level, and they convert 7 figures every single month in their virtual event. And so it just became, a little bit of a silly exercise, but they just recently announced they're actually hosting a live event this fall in Las Vegas, which I'll absolutely be a big part of. So it's 90%. It's not 100%. Physical event, belly to belly, still means a lot. But the punchline of this is that he's going to convert month in and month out all the time online. And then he's going to do one event in 2 years, that's a physical ballroom.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just fascinated by this topic. So we could talk about this for quite some time.
Me too.
We host webinars it's a fairly straightforward process for us. We run some ads, people register, they show up a week later. I do a 45-minute talk, I teach a little bit, and then I offer for people to join our Liberty Builders network. And that's been an interesting process. I thought I would dislike doing them, but I've actually enjoyed doing it. Standing up there virtually in this, you see it's the same. We host them in my same studio here, but I would call that a webinar, right? It's just about an hour long, PowerPoint presentation. I'm the only person talking. Kristen might share a little bit or help me answer some questions. What's the difference in your mind between a webinar model, like what I'm doing, and hosting a virtual event, right? What makes one a virtual event, the other one a webinar?
Well, I guess the first distinction is time, right? So you're saying like, hey, we're spending an hour. I think that's pretty typical of webinar. It's an hour, hour and a half, or something like that, and it's perfectly adequate to sell a $500 thing, which at least in the one that I was on, I swiped my card for is a $500 a month kind of commitment or something like that, and so. An hour and a half is plenty of time for you to build enough credibility that someone that doesn't know you would risk $500 with you. And so if you were hoping to sell me, $5 or $10 or $15,000 in one swipe, you would need more time to build enough credibility for me to make that decision.
Mm-hmm. So, and we've now talked about the fact that maybe it could be done without like third-party speakers or what have you. Maybe it is done with third-party speakers too. Do you do a lot of multi-day events? Do you do a lot of like 5-hour events? And maybe it's different for every person you're working with, but how do you design it?
Does vary, but I think the sweet spot is 3 days. They don't have to be long days, but the sweet spot is 3 days. There's a really specific formula that works well with a high ticket sale like we're talking about. Russell's current event is 5 days long, although the days are not as long as they used to be. Tony's event is 4 days, or not every event, but I mean the event that I'm thinking of is 4 days. So yeah, it's a multi-day event for sure, and 3 days seems to be the sweet spot.
Yeah, well, I find it fascinating to do these. Of course, I have attended some of them, so I know it works because I've been on a Tony Robbins 4-day event and bought a high ticket thing, right? And loved it. And he's talked about this too. He talks about how he initially thought, well, man, my business is going to be kablooey with COVID because I do all my events in person, and then discovered, well, if I do them virtually, I can have a lot more people there. I can only have really $10,000 or $15,000 or 10 or 15,000 people in an arena setting or a big conference hall, but I could have 1 million people and they don't have to leave their homes. I thought it was really fascinating what he's seeing. And so it's really interesting. And you have your own studio. So you're sitting in Avasano Studios right now, right?
Yep. Sitting in the middle of the studio. I'm actually, and you know this, but I'm actually just using a laptop. But here, I'll spin you around a little bit, and you can kind of see what
look at that. That's gorgeous.
What I'm looking at, and so, because the team's not here, I just sat down with my laptop. But yeah, so we're able to run significant events from here, but then we have other partner studios around the U.S. and some of them are bigger, television quality production studios. And so really anything, which is interesting, some of the things that have been talked about lately is, what used to be produced in a $20 million TV studio can now be produced in a $1 million or $2 million studio. And so it's really interesting to see, that's just a function of the technology, right? Like a $2,000 camera now can do what a $15,000 camera used to do.
Yeah, absolutely interesting. So somebody who wanted to work with you, at least one of the problems is solved, right? They know where they can go to get the fancy studio, right? They can go to a farm in Jefferson, Georgia and get it done, or Atlanta area.
Yeah. Well,
I-
we all talk about freedom. Part of freedom for me is, my commute is about 700 yards from my house to my man cave, and we built our studio, at least the first one here, and we're going to build yet another one here as well. And then, the more clients we get, the more we realize that there's only so much time in one studio. So we have partner studios all over the place that are useful. There aren't that many of them that are similar to this, but there's enough of them around the US that we can accommodate that. And there's real power in doing a studio event. But I want to say, you can run a really powerful virtual event just completely virtually on Zoom. But
yeah,
we, even that we take to a much higher level of sophistication, and we're able to, for example, merge 50 or 100 Zoom rooms and manage the chat across all of those spaces. And all of that can be done without a studio. But certainly, if you're running an event and your intention is to convert high six figures or seven figures, then all of the advantages that come with standing in the studio are well worth it.
yeah. Well, this is all fascinating, and I know I'm having a good episode when I'm taking notes. So you'll see I've got some notes here. So you've sparked some ideas in my mind. But one thing that when I was prepping for this, and you and I were messaging back and forth, was I thought we might have time. I think we have enough time. We can talk a little bit about AI, and then we'll get into our ending here, because I know you're really fascinated by where AI is headed. And like all of us, we're a little concerned. What's the next step? In the last few weeks, even I've seen major businesses change. Oracle laid off a significant number of people. Claude and some of these new tools are doing silly things. I mean, I've always employed website developers, and then last week my COO with 0% development experience developed a website from scratch and published it using Claude. And that's just not something, people have been talking about that for a little while. Now this stuff feels like it's here, right? And so talk a little bit about how you think about AI and how you think it impacts our future, how you think other people should think about it as well.
So, yeah, thanks for asking. I want to preface that by telling everyone listening that you shouldn't roll your eyes and tune out, because what I'm going to say is not what everybody has been saying. Everyone has an opinion about AI. It reminds me of 15 years ago, the beginning of social, when it was like everyone's a social media expert.
Yes.
None of us are experts on AI, and if you thought you were yesterday, it's changed today. So I think where my focus is goes back to my faith and goes back to the book, in the sense that we're moving into, I don't think it's arguable anymore. We're moving into the biggest, fastest sea change of everything that no one's ever seen. So what does that mean? So if you could presume for this conversation that 50% of the people in the world are going to lose their job, you can argue about how fast, but it's going to happen. I think it's beyond debate at this point. So what is that? What does the world that we're standing in look like when that's true? And I think it's fast. And I think the answer comes back to hearing God's voice, because the simplest description in my mind of hearing God's voice is learning to trust your intuition again, because I think that's a key antenna point, a key element of how God talks to us. And so getting tuned into that, learning to trust it, and either, if you're not already a creative person, moving toward your creativity, because as you described, your coworker was able to create something super fast on their own in a way that they could never do before. And the person that would have done that for them doesn't have a job, at least in the sense of the job he would have gotten from you. That's where we are. So you have to move toward creativity. And for some people, you're like, well, I'm already a creative guy. Great, cool. Go to the next level and go faster. But if you live in a world where you get paid to do a job and there's no creativity in it, if you don't move out of that really fast, you're screwed soon. And so, but I would describe that as a good reason to get on your knees, because I think that God's telling us all the time who we are, what he built us for, and he does that through our imagination. But we mostly as humans have learned to ignore that. And when God tells us the crazy things that he thinks we should go do, we go, oh, that's not practical. I can't do that. I don't have enough money, which is at its root is just fear, which, all through scripture, he says, don't be afraid. And this is why. So don't be afraid of AI. Learn to hear God's voice and trust your intuition and go jump into something creative and you'll do great. And if you don't do that, you're in a world of hurt, I think.
Yeah. Well, powerful. And now we're running out of time. And so I want to do what we call our lightning round. So we're going to ask 3 questions. We'll try, although there's very low accountability, to get 90 seconds of each on each. So the first one is, I want you to imagine decades from now, you're looking back on your life and what may be your final days. How will you know that you've had a life well lived?
Oh man, that's such a good question. Tough question. I love the idea of eulogy goals, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're at your funeral, how many people are there? What did they say about you? How many people did you impact? And I'm a little afraid of that. And I think that most people, when you even take time to think that way, would go like, I don't know, like how many people are going to be at my funeral? What are they going to say about me? And did I have the impact that I want to have? And the older we get, I think the more our attention shifts to that kind of thinking in a really positive way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now for something completely different. 90 seconds on any topic that's been interesting you lately. It just needs to be off topic. So it's not AI related. It's not virtual event related. It's not about your book. What's something that's got you going down the rabbit hole?
Something that's got me going down the rabbit hole. Man, I'm so deep into my work mode. Well, I'll say this, and it's work related, but it's not something that we've talked about, is that we talked briefly about sort of ClickFunnels and that world. I'm addicted to the idea that you can, reach your largest possible audience with or without an event. You can reach your largest possible audience on the internet to sell your thing that you're passionate and creative about, which, goes to the other question about, doing that. But every single person that I talk to is that. So my sister, who almost definitely will not listen to this, designs wedding cakes for a living. And I'm like trying to take her from being a person who goes to work in a particular location and does her little cake thing all the time into a person who's on the internet who can design a wedding cake for anybody anywhere and do an amazing job and probably quadruple her business overnight just by shifting her thinking around that. And so it's weird that because it's business, I guess, but that's the thing that I'm most addicted to and passionate about.
Yeah, not weird at all. Last one is easy for you, I'm sure, but I want you to pretend we've not been on this podcast already for 35 minutes talking about who you are and your expertise. And let's say somebody fast forwarded to this moment and they're listening to you now. In 90 seconds, who are you? What do you do? Who should be finding you? And how do you help them?
Well, first and foremost, I'm a weird old guy who hears God's voice, and I come to life talking about the book that he gave me and what deeper and deeper relationship with Christ looks like. So I have to say that first and foremost. And then, in my business gear, I'm passionate about the scale of digital marketing and how that intersects with events. But yeah, we're looking for those persons of impact. If you're passionate and on purpose about what you do, you want to reach a larger audience, we know how to do that. And that's what we do every day.
Awesome. Well, it's been great to have you on, Matt. People can find you best at certainsuccess.com, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And then if they want to find the book, is there a website for the book? dirtydisciple.com. And of course, you can buy the book on Amazon. And we're
building all kinds of assets behind that, but it's just been out for a few months. So the easy way is on Amazon, or if you reach out to me, certainsuccess.com will take you to my LinkedIn, and Matt Fagioli on all the socials. But if you reach out to me and you want me to send you a book, I'll do it.
That's awesome. Well, this has been great, Matt. And for those of you who've taken 40 minutes and listened into our conversation, we appreciate your time. I know it's valuable. Please like and subscribe so you find our next episode. And if you want to learn more about what Kristen and I are up to, check us out at www.libertyspenders.com. Until next time.